A.C.E.S Junkyard Podcast. Those annoying mech Avengers keep yelling about how the new Locust meta is nigh.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Armored Combat Escalation Service Podcast, episode 51, your number one voted MWM Battletech podcast, coming to you live from the food court at Steiner Arena on Solaris. Today is March 21st, 2017. I'm Brandon, also known as Cattra. Kell. With me today is Tierkron. How's it going?
Pretty good. You know, for being in the food court at the Steiner Arena, you'd think it'd be a little bit more classy than this, but oh well.
Yeah, I don't know. I just find it weird that, like, hot dogs and stuff like that, it's just, I would think that they have better food.
The fact that
those
there's
Steiners are
five
known for their
galactic
heavy mechs.
Starbucks. I mean, who needs that many galactic Starbucks? I mean, would it kill them to get a galactic Arby's in here?
I mean, those Steiners, they're only known for what? Two things? Assault lances and their hot dogs. I mean, they got nothing else. So, to begin with, I guess the biggest news and announcement as far as A.C.E.S concerns is that our new website is up and operational. So,
yay! Finally,
it's only been 2 months. No,
big thanks to Mr. Shannon.
Mr. Shannon, big thank you to him. So website 2.0 is no longer at our old URL. We are now acesmercs.com, all one word. So if you want to hire us and or just come hang out, for all A.C.E.S members, you will have to remake your accounts because it's all new servers. So our uptime should hopefully be a lot better than the old one. And that again is acesmercs.com, ACESmercs.com.
And there will be a link in the description below this. So
yes. So all listeners, friends, and A.C.E.S family, please come back and make new accounts, and so we can get tracking and stuff like that. But let us move on to actual MechWarrior and BattleTech news. And one of the reasons why I text Tierkron like last week saying, are you seeing this emergency podcast is called, instead of doing what I said last time was about probably another month away because no content.
Well, no, at least another week away, because we would have covered the March patch and the announcement of the website, but we have something even bigger and better to talk about than just the patch. So
that's right. Orca confirmed for MechWarrior. No, I'm just joking.
Oh, come on.
So the biggest thing probably coming out of the game this week is actually two big things. One, both of which are very, very big content updates. So I'm sure some of you guys have already noticed, but the Civil War era is going to be coming to MechWarrior Online, and that means we are now pushing out of the 3050s and into the 3060s.
Officially 3062 to 3067.
Yeah, specifically that time frame. And with that, we are getting a lot of stuff. So should we go over the tech first or the other content?
Let's go over the tech first. So basically, the easiest ones to discuss are we're finally, Intersphere's finally getting the other LB X autocannons, the LB2, LB5, LB20, the other Ultra autocannons, the UAC2, the Ultra 10, the Ultra 20. It's getting the other ER lasers, the ER small, the ER medium, the other streaks, the Streak 4, the Streak 6. And then it's getting a number of things that we speculated on, but it's also getting a lot of things that I was actually a little surprised about. I didn't think these would be coming this quickly into the game. Uh, we are seeing that the light and heavy Gauss rifle are finally going to be entering the game. The rotary autocannon, the rotary AC2, the rotary AC5 are going to be added. The light and heavy machine gun are both going to be added. All of the MRM launchers, which are medium range missiles, the MRM-10, the MRM-20, the MRM-30, the MRM-40 are being added. Rocket launchers, and this was one that caught me completely by surprise. I did not see that rocket launchers would ever make it into the game, but they're coming with the rocket launcher 10, rocket launcher 15, and rocket launcher 20. Light and heavy PPCs are going to be added to the game, as well as the snub nose PPC. And we're going to see inner sphere targeting computers added into the game. We're also seeing laser AMS added into it for the inner sphere. Then the light engine, something we've been asking for a while now. The light fusion engine is making it into MWO for the inner sphere. And then finally, two armor types are being added to the game, and I don't really think anyone saw these coming. Light ferro fibrous and stealth armor are both being added for the inner sphere. And then on the clan side, we can't forget the clans. They need some new toys to play with as well. They're also getting light and heavy machine guns. They're getting ER micro lasers and micro pulse lasers. They're getting all of their heavy lasers, the heavy small, the heavy medium, and heavy large laser. They're getting light tag, the light active probe, and laser AMS. And then they're also getting the ATM, which we discussed last time. This time, specifically, they're getting the ATM-3, the ATM-6, the ATM-9, and the ATM-12. And so that's all the new tech that has been announced. However, they did put a small caveat in the fine print that they are going to be updating this list and discussing it more as time progresses between now and the initial release date of July 18th. So some things may be added to the list that aren't already there. Some things may be taken out or delayed. It all depends on development time, and I would assume testing as time progresses. But yeah, lots of things.
So we might as well jump into the inner sphere tech because this is going to be, in my opinion, the biggest change in the game. Mainly, um, in a lot of ways, the stuff added to the inner sphere, I think, is going to help balance more so than, say, what the clans are getting.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is that you got the light engines, which are basically going to act, or based on the write up that they have written there, are supposedly going to act like the clan engines.
Yes.
As in,
we've talked about light engines before.
yeah, as in you're going to have the two critical slots in the side torso. So if you lose a side torso, that's you're not dead basically.
Yeah. In terms of crit space, they function the exact same as a clan XL engine. The downside, though, to a light engine is it doesn't get you the same weight savings as an XL engine, be it inner sphere or clan. So while you don't die from losing a side torso, you are not getting the same 50% reduction in overall weight as compared to a standard. You're only getting 25% weight reduction. So your engine is 75% of what it would be to the equivalent standard engine. So you're getting survivability at the expense of weight. So it's one of those things that light mechs are going to have intersphere light mechs. It's going to be a real toss up whether you want survivability or weight savings in order to have a larger engine and have more speed or more weaponry. Uh, Mediums, same thing. I really see the light engine helping heavy mechs and assault mechs,
I was
though.
going to say assault mechs would probably benefit the absolute most out of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I there's going to be outliers, of course, as because while the light engine is going to save you weight and increase survivability, it does take up 2 crit slots in each side torso. So if you've got something like a Mauler or an Atlas where you're packing those side torsos with large crit weapons or a lot of weapons, you might not be able to run a light engine just due to the space requirements. So it's going to be one of those things where you're going to have to adjust your build and and figure out, okay, how am I do I want survivability and less weight, or do I want more crit space at the cost of weight? It's going to change builds around a lot for a number of mechs, but at the same time, in certain areas, it's probably not going to have that big of effect. I'm predicting that most light pilots, at least experienced light pilots, are going to stick with XL engines because they want the speed over anything else. Uh, as it's been said a number of times, for light mechs, speed is armor for them. So switching your XL out for a light engine may not be all that advantageous. But for heavier mechs, I could see some of the upper mediums like the Griffin and Shadowhawk and Wolverine switching to light engines. I can see a lot of the heavies switching over to light engines, and I can see most of the assault mechs doing so. But again, you're going to have the question come up of, can you fit it into your build? Do you have the crit space to run it? Uh, and is it worthwhile for you to do so? Because the light engine is going to cost a bit more than the standard engine, but it won't cost as much as the XL engine.
yeah. And I agree. Your light mechs and even your agile medium mechs like cicadas and stuff like that, you'd probably going to see people end up running the XLs over the light engines, just because people have been doing it for so long that it's and also the savings is not really worth the trade off. I think for those mechs because chances are if you're getting a left or right torso blown off you on as a light mech, it's only a matter of time before you either get center torso like dominated or the other side torso comes off. Aside from that, the addition of the lighter quote in quotations, but like the smaller caliber LBXs and autocannons are also, I think, a huge benefit in terms of inner sphere technology. Mainly because if you want the ultra autocannons or the LBXs, you're not forced almost to dedicate 12 tons to it, or I shouldn't say 12 tons, like 14, I think it is, isn't it? 16.
Yeah,
What's the ultra, or what's the ultra 5 currently is what, 8?
the Ultra 5, I think it's 8.
Yeah, but the LBX is, I think, starts at 10.
Yeah, the LBX
Yeah.
is 10. So no, I think the Ultra 5 is 9. I don't. I think it's 9 tons, not 8 tons. I think the regular AC5 is.
So LBX is, I just pulled up on Smurfy here real quick. 6 and the Ultra is 5. Or sorry, that's slots. Damn it. Tons.
Yeah, that's crit.
Ultra is 9 and LBX is 11. But
Yeah.
so that said, hopefully these lighter variants, of course, should be a little, because what the Ultra 2 something like wasn't it like I want to say something like 7.
The Ultra 2 going by tabletop value, which is is pretty much replicated 1-for-1 into MWO, is 7 tons.
Yeah. So it doesn't seem like a whole lot for 2 tons of difference, but I think on a lot of the, especially light mechs that have ballistic slots, it could be interesting. It all depends on how the functionality is, though, and the jam rates and that sort of stuff. Because those are the biggest things right now with the Ultra 5 versus regular 5. And the LBXs, it all depends, again, as well, on the spread and like a few other factors. Such as, but they're also, again, with the smaller, the 2s and the 5s, for example, medium mechs, you could almost do, instead of like stacking AC5s, you could stack LBX 10s, or sorry, LBX 5s instead, which would create some hopefully interesting close combat mechs. But again, that's something we'll have to wait and see. But in terms, I think, again, just the more variance in that category of ballistic weapons, I think is really good for the Inner Sphere to get.
Yeah, the additional LBX autocannons and ultras are pretty much going to ape what's already in the game for the Inner Sphere. It's just going to be a caliber difference and weight and crit slot difference than what's already there. So it's not really that much of a surprise. Same thing with the ER small and ER medium. They're pretty much going to be a variation of what's already there. So it's not anything, there's going to be no new mechanic there for people to wrap their heads around. Same thing with the additional streak launchers. There's really nothing there that they have to relearn. Light and heavy Gauss are going to be interesting. The light Gauss weighs less but has greater range at less damage, while the heavy Gauss has more damage but weighs more and has less range. Additionally, at least in tabletop, it used to be that the heavy Gauss rifle could not be mounted in limbs. It could only be torso mounted. I don't know if MWO, if PGI will bring that rule in as well. We'll have to wait and see. The heavy Gauss rifle also has a minimum range, so we'll have to see if that gets added or not. But that could be very interesting because the light Gauss rifle weighs roughly the equivalent of a clan Gauss rifle, but has greater range than even the clan Gauss rifle has. So
yeah,
on those,
1,200 at 12 tons, if I recall.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so for like those Jaeger mechs, the dual Gauss Jaeger mechs, if you're running 2 light Gauss rifle, that means you're going to have you're going to have extra weight savings where you can have more ammo, or you can put in, some lasers as backup weapons and not worry about cutting into your armor or into your ammo stores for it. So there are a number of mechs that are going to benefit greatly from the addition of the light and heavy Gauss. The heavy Gauss,
I just want to bring it up as well, like the light Gauss rifle. I wonder if it's going to be like in previous MechWarrior games, and I'm thinking it probably will be, and take up less slots as well.
yes, it does have less crit space.
Yeah, so it should again be one of those weapons that mechs that are rocking XL engines that you couldn't slap Gauss rifles in the torsos before. I think there's a couple that you weren't able to just because of because of
Crit space.
Yeah, crit space that you should be able to now.
Yeah,
But
the heavy Gauss rifle also, it's tabletop. It's 11 crit slots. So it's one crit slot larger than an AC-20, which means that this is one of those weapons where if you run it, you may not be able to stick a light engine or a XL engine in if they force you to push this in one of the side torsos, depending on what else you've got put in there. If you've got crit space taken up, say by endo steel, so these are weapons. While the mechanics of them I don't think are going to change, they're basically going to function just like regular Gauss rifles with the charge mechanic. The difference being in the damage that they do and the range that they function at. People are going to have to re-examine how they apply them based on the crit space and weight savings that they have. So it'll be interesting to see how people build around these weapons if they want to use them. And I'm very interested to see if PGI implements the heavy Gauss rifle rule of only allowing it to be inside torsos and not in limbs.
Of course, you have the introduction of the ER medium laser and the ER small laser for inner sphere use, which I'm until again more statistics come out for it, might just overtake the regular medium,
Yeah.
like we've seen in many other MechWarrior titles.
Yeah. The big difference between the regular lasers and the ERs is just like with the regular large and the ER large, it's a matter of the heat generation. So ER mediums are much hotter than regular mediums. So if you're boating like 6 medium lasers and you switch those all out for ERs, you're going to see an immediate spike in your heat when as soon as you fire those off, which could affect how many you take or how you build around it, because you're going to have to take into account that extra, I think it's like 2 heat for each medium laser that you replace with an ER. So, and in this case, also remember the ER medium laser and ER small laser, while they are the same crit size and same weight as as the regular small and regular medium, uh, they do not gain additional damage. It's only range that they gain. They gain range and heat. So
Which again, though, is still very, very important in this, in basically in any of the MechWarrior games, is that range before damage fall off is always important. So again, I'm thinking you're going to see much like in other MechWarrior games, unless they change something, the ER medium laser becoming almost a must-have.
yeah, the ER has in tabletop has 5 heat versus the medium lasers 3, so it's an increase of 2. So it's, if you've got a build based only around medium lasers and you've got the cooling efficiency there, yeah, switching them out for ER mediums is going to be a no-brainer. But if you've got a build that is pretty heavy on the heat with just regular medium lasers, switching to ERs may not be friendly for you. So it's going to be one of those things people are going to have to learn and try as they rebuild their mechs. The light and heavy machine guns, not a lot of change there. Basically,
Well, again, weapons that are never going to be used.
uh, I could see the heavy machine guns getting used. The lights,
Really?
I don't. Yeah, mainly on things that rely on machine guns. I could see people taking their embers and switching the machine guns there for heavies, and I could see some of the locusts that utilize machine guns switching their machine guns out for heavies. It's really going to depend on how they work the mechanics of them. If they give these, if because the real thing with the light and heavy machine guns are the changes to range and damage. The light machine gun has a longer range and weighs less, but deals less damage. The heavy machine gun weighs more than a regular machine gun, but deals more damage and has a shorter range. So I'll be machine guns as a whole are a crit seeking weapon that as soon as you get armor open and you have internals at your mercy, you open up with machine guns if you're in ranged in order to increase your chance of critting. If they adjust crit values for the damage that these the light and heavy machine guns do, I could see people taking them. It's going to depend as we learn more about what the mechanics are going to be, other than what we know from tabletop. So it's it'll be interesting there, and I do see a place for them. But like the regular machine gun, it's going to be very specific. You're not going to take just one, just like with regular machine guns. You're not going to take one. And you may not even just take two. You're going to want, at least 3 or 4 if possible. But it's one of those things that people are going to have to wrap their head around as once this comes out in July.
I mean, that's fair. I just never really used machine guns to begin with. I don't think I have any builds with machine guns as they currently are, so I don't see myself taking them. But I mean, I guess I'm thinking like locusts and stuff like that might utilize them a little bit more than now. But it's hard to say right now.
Yeah.
Of course, we also have the Streak SRM 4 and 6s as well.
Yeah, not much of a change there.
No, it's just I'm again when it comes to mechs utilizing streaks, having the more volley per streak missile again is always a benefit. The one I want to talk about though, really in depth, is the MRMs, and the reason I want to talk about MRMs is that depending on how they function, I can either see them being completely ignored or taken as like, I don't know how to say it other than like a somewhat backup weapon. And the reason I say this is that currently in the game, and how it's always worked, or not always worked, but currently in MechWarrior Online, LRMs, they arc up and then come down. And if MRMs follow that same flight pattern, I don't think you're going to see. I think they're going to just be completely ignored.
Well, that's not how MRMs work.
And I was going to say, MRMs, though, typically they fire straight ahead, almost like SRMs, correct?
Yes. MRMs are are termed as dead fire missiles, just like SRMs. They're basically fire and forget. There's no lock on like with LRMs or like with streaks.
But I guess what I meant is that even if you didn't have a lock with the LRMs and MWO, they go up and then come down.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's my concern with the MRMs, because if they basically just take the same flight path, then you can just write them off completely because there's no point.
Well,
if they fire
that
straight ahead like SRMs and like in previous games, I think you will see MRMs actually utilized. I think a lot of builds might take a couple, especially things like the catapult. You might actually see them become somewhat viable just by stacking MRMs, because all they have to do is just walk out of cover, fire one of their pods, and then go straight ahead. So anything that walks out will be met with it.
Yeah. The thing to remember with MRMs are that they are a relatively low damage missile. They rely more on quantity than quality in terms of their damage. In tabletop, it's one damage value per missile, so it's a 1v1 ratio. Whereas a SRM in tabletop is a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 damage to every missile. The big thing with MRMs is going to be the spread that they have when fired, because MRMs do not use Artemis. They use a system called Apollo, the Apollo guidance system, instead of the Artemis guidance system, which hasn't been announced if that will be added in or not. I could see them adding it in because Apollo acts basically like Artemis does. Increases the crit value of the weapon and increases the weight, and you have to use this. You have to buy Apollo MRM ammunition. You can't use regular MRM ammunition to it, so it's more expensive. but at the same time, they haven't announced it, so I don't know if it's going to be there or not. I'm hoping it would be, but we'll have to wait and see. And it's if it's not included, then the big question for MRMs are going to be what the spread is on them. Because they do have a longer range than SRMs, you may not be able to use that range as effectively if they have a larger spread, because you could fire at, you know, the
I,
ninety
I, I
percent of your range and only hit half your spread.
yeah,
So it's
I
it's
got
going to it's going to be something where we're going to have to see some play testing on this, and some preview of how it works and what it acts like in game before I can say if this is going to be great or lackluster.
I just want to pick your brain on a two different what basically with the MRMs. I just want to pick your brain on what you think would be better. And this is all hypothetical for everyone listening. This is hypothetical. I don't actually know. MRMs. Do you want them to launch all at once, as we see with with Intersphere LRMs currently, where all missiles go at once in the straight line, or would you rather them act almost like clan LRMs, where they launch in like a sequence? So you launch like they go almost one at a time in a line.
I would say, since it's an inner-sphere weapon, to keep it similar to what is already there for SRMs and LRMs, that if you're putting the launcher into a slot that allows you to have, say, all 10 tubes for the MRM-10, then it should launch all 10 at once. That said, if you're putting it in a spot that only has 5 tubes, then you're going to see a volley of 5 and 5. But that again, that's something that's probably going to also have to be adjusted now that MRMs are going to be added in. We
Yes.
could see some of the mechs and variants that have missiles on them having their tube count reworked.
Well, this
At
is the
least for
thing.
where MRMs are concerned.
Yeah, and this is what I'm thinking, because I think a lot of mechs recently don't have very limited tube space. Even
No,
the
not
Assassin, or
anymore.
let me bring up something. I just want to double check something. Um, Even a mech that was simply released today, I think So the Assassin, which we'll talk about later, all its missile points are in groups of 10.
Yeah.
I think almost every single missile group of any mech, pretty much a year outside of the original groupings, are all in variables of 5, I want to say. So it's like 10 or 5, 10, 15, and 20.
I think so. I
I
think
don't
they've
think
eliminated the
I
by
was about to
two.
say, I think they eliminated things like the quick draw having 4. um I'm just going through Smurfy for people who are wondering what I'm talking about. The
The
Cataphract
interesting
having 6s, 2 times 6. So like, I wonder if if they'll go. I don't think they will, but it would be really interesting to see them either in the future or going back and reworking some of those to make different sized tubes again.
Yeah. And I that's going to depend on how much time and effort they want to put into it. Um, I would assume eventually they'll get around to fixing geometry of it as needed, but it'll be one of those things that's, I don't think, hypercritical for them to do immediately. But they might have a difference of opinion on that, and they might want to be having that already set and to go as soon as these launch in July. The interesting thing is the smallest MRM launcher, the 10, is the same crit and uh, weight as the SRM 6. So it's very easy to switch 10s and 6s between each other. The big area where things get messy is when you go to the 15, the 20. I'm sorry, the 10, outside of the 10, you go to the 20, the 30, and the 40, because then you start getting some really large launchers and some really in both terms of weight and in crit space. The 40 is, if I remember correctly, it's 12 tons and 7 crit slots in tabletop. So it's a big piece of weaponry. It's roughly the equivalent size of a AC-20, though it does weigh less. So there's going to be, in terms of mechs that can carry a lot of these launchers, you're going to have to people are going to have to find those happy mediums between how much they can pack on and how much they can actually realistically use. So
Yeah.
I can definitely see the MRMs breathing, as you said. The catapult's going to benefit from them. I'm pretty certain the stalker is going to really benefit from them. The assassin, I could see it. The javelin that's coming up, I could see it. But
Well, I'm even
some,
thinking like some mechs like the Bushwhacker, for example.
yeah, I could see the bushwhacker.
I mean, the Bushwhacker right now is kind of in an interesting spot where you have enough ballistics that you can run some stuff with an energy base, because all the center torso stuff, you get just pure energy in there. But the whole left side, like, if you throw a racking of MRMs in there, even if you, instead of having the ballistic, throw in a racking or two of MRMs and your energy, it might be viable. Again, we don't know how they're going to function in game yet, so we can't say, but MRMs could potentially be good, because again, if they're just fire and forget, so you peek out, know where an enemy is, so you just launch MRMs, they go straight, and anyone that walks in the path gets hit and takes damage. Much like SRMs, they're very much medium range missiles, but they're pretty much like longer range SRMs, I guess, in functionality.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to talk about is the rocket launchers, and the reason I want to talk about this. Go ahead, Tierkron.
The rocket launchers are one of those weapon systems I've never been all that keen on. I don't like them in tabletop. I am hesitant to see them come into MWO because rocket launchers are, if you read the description, they're a one-shot launcher that fires unguided, low-damage rockets. So they're basically a one-shot SRM or MRM. The big selling point is that they have very low tonnage and very low crit space for them.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's a one and done. You fire that rocket launcher 10 or 15 or 20 off and it's gone. So if you are not dead on with it, you've wasted your shot. And you best hope to have a lot of, some good backup weapons. This is not the type of weapon system you use as a primary weapon system. It's, a lot of people are very happy saying, "Oh, this will be great for boating." And I'm like, no, it's not, because even if you've got 6 spaces for missile hard points and you put 6 rocket launcher 20s on there, yeah, you've got one big strike, but after that, you're out of luck. You have nothing unless you've got some good backup, lasers or ballistics, there, you're in trouble. So
I very much agree, and I think that falls into a lot of like the 50-ton and above mechs with the rocket launchers. I don't think you're going to see those used on them. And again, my biggest problem with the rocket launchers is that I think the niche for them, if they wanted them to be used, was to get rid of that low damage part. I'm not saying make them super high damage one and done type things, because that's stupid, but give them a little bit of damage to them and make it so a mech. I'm just trying to think of a good mech, for example. Again, let's talk about the assassin. The assassin has in one of the variants has 4 missile bays in the left and right torso or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it has 2 energy. So if you wanted to, it's a very fast, nimble mech. And if you wanted to, you could put a couple rocket launchers in those side torsos, and then you'd rely on your energy as your prime weapon. But then you could do like you're saying, it's a one and done. So you got to be good. But I think the rocket launcher has a place. I think as a low damage one and done weapon, I don't think it's going to be utilized a whole lot aside from maybe a few people playing around in locusts or ravens and that sort of stuff
Yeah.
that are trying some things out.
I mean,
But
the-
I think if they functioned more as a very close range, one and done, medium damage rockets, I think they would be perfect. I think they would have a place, because I think it's one
yeah, it's
rocket
a 1 to
launcher.
1.
I was gonna say one rocket launcher 10 is the same as one SRM 6 plus ammo or something like that.
No, the rocket launcher 10 does one damage value per missile.
No, I meant
Oh,
as far as like tonnage.
in terms of tonnage, no. The rocket launcher 10 has a tonnage weight of half a ton and only takes
Okay.
up one crit slot. So it's basically the equivalent of a machine gun.
Okay, so
It's
yeah, that's what I was thinking. So the lighter mechs, I think you'd see a much bigger benefit out of them. Being able to use the rocket launchers at very close range, even though it's a one and done weapon, if they did moderate amount or a decent amount of damage for being a one and done weapon. And then it would force the light mechs to rely on the energy or backup weapons that they have, or their primary weapons that they have. I think it would be very good for a light harass type build where they would jump in, just alpha, or I shouldn't say alpha, but just launch the rockets, hopefully get hits, and then go back and rely on their other weapons. Again, rocket launchers, I'm with you. Something I didn't use very much in tabletop. In tabletop, I used a lot of, we'll talk about it a little bit later, in clan technology, ATMs. But I think the rocket launcher in MWO could have a place, but it's hard to say until, again, more information is given out. But the way that it's kind of presented or has been done in the past, I don't think so. I think people are going to be taking SRMs over rocket launchers. But that said, I do, in this grand vision of mine, I do see a niche spot for rocket launchers, but it's going to need work, and the community at the end of the day are going to have to understand that perhaps sometimes stuff in the tabletop cannot translate one-to-one to a game.
Yeah.
Because rocket launchers, if people want it to be strictly TRO, Malore specific, tips neuro helmet, like, I don't think rocket launchers will be viable in the game at all. People will just take SRMs. But if they're willing to let PGI or even hypothetically HPS in the future, because I have a feeling some of this might have to do with perhaps maybe an expansion to the BattleTech tabletop game if they're considering doing that, or not the BattleTech tabletop game, but the BattleTech turn-based strategy game. If they're allowing PGI to perhaps tweak some things, I think rocket launchers could have a very unique and very interesting place in the game. And that's, like I said, as low tonnage, no ammunition required, or bonus or extra ammo purchases type thing required, missile pod space that could do moderate damage for a one-shot deal.
Yeah. It'll also be interesting with rocket launchers, like with MRMs, to see what their spread is like. Unlike any of the other launchers, rocket launchers have no guidance system that you can add on to them. So there's no Artemis, there's no Apollo. They are as they sit in vanilla. Now, tabletop has its rules on how spreads calculated for them, and it'll be interesting to see what PGI does with rocket launchers to determine spread. So, but as you said, yeah, they're one of those things that I only utilize them in tabletop if the campaign forced me, like if it was the Jihad and there was nothing else available other than rocket launchers to replace my missiles with, or if I was playing a periphery campaign where rocket launchers are more prevalent because the more advanced missile launching systems aren't available. But in MWO, where basically everything's available from the get-go, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm torn on whether or not these things are actually going to be useful.
And like I said, in this grand scheme of thing, I think there could be a role created. And I don't want to go on this tangent again and reiterate what I was saying, but it comes down to basically understanding where and how they could be useful,
Yeah.
and
So
allowing the company to do that.
So, the
Have
rotary autocannons.
yes,
This is one weapon system I'm very intrigued about. I did not think we were going to get rotaries, at least not in the same update where we're getting the other LBX and other ultras. I thought rotaries would be held off for a lot longer. Um, the thing with the rotaries are basically they're an ultra autocannon. In tabletop, you can determine how many shots you fire, be it one or two or six, or a maximum of six. And depending on how many you choose to shoot, it increases your jam chance, and it also increases the heat that the weapon puts out. The damage is much less than other autocannons, so it's it's one of those weapons where you can do a lot of damage with it very quickly, but if it jams up, you are could be in a lot of trouble. So I'm very curious to see how they're going to work jam chance into this, because the Ultra Autocannon 5 has, unless you've got your mech quirked for jam chance, tends to jam very sporadically and often. So I'm worried that the rotary autocannons are going to be worse than that in terms of their jam chance, which would mean that they're kind of useless. That also being said, I don't know how they're going to deal with how it actually fires. We know that there's going to be a spin up, much like a minigun. You have to start the barrels rotating before it actually starts to fire, and when you stop firing, it has to rotate down before any cooling begins. But that begs the question of what's the firing actually going to be like on it? Are you going to be able to squeeze off one or two shots, or is it going to be a short burst of shots, or can you basically hold down the trigger until it jams up or until you release it and just continuously fire a wave of projectiles? It's one of those things that I'm not certain how they're going to address the actual mechanics of it. I'm very interested to see what they end up doing. I know in the past, the Mech Tech guys, when they released the big fan patch for Mech Warrior 4 Mercenaries that included rotaries, they treated them like basically a minigun, where you held down the trigger and just let the lead fly, and the longer you held the trigger down, the greater your increased chance of jamming. But I don't know how it's going to translate here into MWO, if they'll take the same concept or not. So it'll be one of those things that we're going to have to really pay attention to and see when they start demonstrating and when they release these for public test.
and I agree. I think rotaries will probably have a place, but it all depends on functionality. And again, the jam rates is going to be the other issue as well. Much like the UX as well, the biggest thing with the new ones is going to be the jam rates on the 2 versus the 10 versus the 20, and what those are going to be like. But rotaries, I could see them, specific high mounted mechs like the Jaeger mech and the Rifleman. I think you could see them come into play depending on how functionality is. I think it
Yep.
could be interesting, and I think it could be a lot of fun. Of course, again, I'm with you. I would rather see how they function in game. The idea of a spin up time and a spin down time, I think it's fine. It makes sense. Because I think that was even present in, like you were saying, the MechWarrior 4 Mech Tech expansions, and I believe even in Living Legends they had. I think they were there. I'm pretty sure they
Yeah, I
were.
think they might have been.
Yeah, they were.
Um,
And they also had spin up times.
yeah. One of the suggestions I've seen being kicked around on the forums of how rotaries will work in MWO is basically the inner sphere autocannons work on a one shot burst in terms of the shells fired, whereas clans, even that between their ultras and their regulars, all fire a stream of shells. And the suggestion's been made that the rotaries are going to fire a stream basically like the clans do. And it'll be like a stream of 5 or 6 shots. You'll rotate, you'll hold down the trigger, get the rotation going, and then it'll fire off 5 to 6 shots. Rotate, for half a second, and then another 5 to 6 shots, and your jam chance will increase from there. Um, I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but that's been a suggestion that's being kicked around. So again, very interesting to see how that plays out. Uh, PPCs.
There's 3 PPCs coming out.
Yeah, the light PPC, the heavy PPC, and the snub nose PPC. Now, the light PPC is basically a lighter version of the PPC, as the name implies. It weighs less, takes up less crit space, has less damage and less heat, but has a longer range profile. In tabletop, it's often referred to basically as if a regular PPC is a medium laser, then light PPC is a small laser. But it's not a really good analogy. I really don't like utilizing that because there is another PPC that kind of fills that role that we aren't going to get into. The heavy PPC, like its name implies, is heavier than the regular PPC, and the ER PPC has more crit slots, has greater heat, but has greater damage. Has greater damage than even the Inner Sphere ER PPC has. In fact, it's in terms of damage, it's on par with a Clan ER PPC. The problem that the heavy PPC has is just like a regular PPC, it does have a minimum range. It has that 90-meter minimum range that within 90 meters, you can fire it. It's just not going to do any damage. So uh, it's one of those things you have to keep in the back of your mind. The range for it is actually pretty comparable for the light PPC because the heavy PPC was basically built to be the inner sphere equivalent of the clan ER PPC. So it's got better range than the regular PPC, though it doesn't have the same great range as the ER PPC. So it's going to be there. Okay, do you want more damage than the ER PPC? But you're going to have the trade-off of more weight, more crit space, more heat, and the minimum range added in. Um, it'll be interesting. I think the light PPC is actually going to be more utilized than the heavy, but it'll be very interesting to see there. And then finally, the snub nose PPC is basically the PPC equivalent of a shotgun. It does it's got less crit space than a regular PPC. It weighs, I believe, roughly a little less, but it trades off range for damage. So at longer ranges, it does less damage, but at closer ranges, it does more damage.
Yes,
So
and
it will,
these are the types of weapons that I'm kind of looking forward the most to.
yeah. So the snub nose PPC is perfect for people who like to brawl and want to use PPCs in the brawl. Uh, it has no minimum range, so at close ranges where you're in, your most optimum damage dealing range, it will do the maximum amount of damage, which in tabletop is 10, which is a lot for a 6-ton 2 crit weapon. Uh, that said, it also is very it does produce a lot of heat. So it's it's one of those weapons that's good that brawlers are gonna love, but people who like to play at range are probably not going to enjoy. I could see a lot of people taking snub nose PPCs if as backup weapons for missile boats because they are a nasty little surprise when encountered. So it'll be very interesting again to see how people work these into their builds and how they fit into the meta of weaponry in MWO once they're released.
Yes, and I think the Snub-Nosed PPC is going to become a favorite of some of light mechs as well. I'm looking at you specifically, things like the Panther, um, where you used to be boating two ERs or two PPCs more or less. And now they could probably boat two Snub Noses and perform better.
Yeah. Um,
Eh,
and that and on a light mech like the Panther, that turns that Panther into a nasty little hunter killer. I mean, because any other light mech it runs into, it's going to basically be doing if it's got two snub nose PPCs and hits with both of them, it's doing the equivalent of an AC-20 shot, and that's
yes, and
that
that's
I don't care what light mech you're in, that's not something you want to be on the receiving end of.
again, and this is where I'm thinking like a lot of this inner sphere tech. Before we hop into some of the other things like the armors and TCs and laser AMS, is I think a lot of these weapons really bump up and normalize lights versus assaults in terms of being able to do damage and like what they can do. And with that even being said, I think a lot of these inner sphere weapons in general help bump up the imbalance in just technology between the clans and the inner sphere.
Yeah.
I think I don't think a lot of people, or I think some people obviously have realized this, but I don't think a lot of people realize that these specific weapons in general, especially when we look at like the history of the tabletop, were introduced to shrink that gap that a lot of tabletop players saw during this sort of period as well with the game's development. So it should be interesting. But let's talk about light ferrofibrous armor
Yeah, light
and the
ferrofibrous.
stealth armor as well. So let's
Uh,
just talk about
yeah,
armor in general, but we'll start
yeah.
with light ferro.
Yeah, light Pharaoh. Basically, it's the same crit slots as Clan Pharaoh, so it only takes up 7 crit slots as opposed to a regular Inner Sphere Pharaoh, which does 14 crit slots. The trade-off there is you don't get a lot of weight savings from it, and it's one of those things. Pharaoh Fibrous doesn't get you a lot of weight savings anyway. Um, Usually, it only ranges to maybe
I was
half
gonna
a
say
ton
usually.
to 2 tons.
I was gonna
It's
say
not a lot.
usually about 1 to 1.25, like around that area for most
Yeah.
mechs.
So light Pharaoh, it's going to save you some weight, but not a ton, not a lot. So its use is going to be very sporadic. I think it's really going to depend on what the build of the mech is, and if you need just that little bit more weight in order to increase, engine size or heat efficiency, and you don't have the crit space for regular Pharaoh, you can use light Pharaoh instead. But it's one of those things where I don't see it being utilized all that much, just like how Pharaoh isn't utilized all that much. Uh, the cost to gain ratio just isn't in favor of it. You're better off, getting endo steel instead. So it I'm not sure what place it will have in most builds, and I think it's going to be utilized only in very specific variants and very specific mechs. Much like how this next armor, stealth armor. Stealth armor basically works just like standard plate. It doesn't give you extra damage, tanking ability. It takes up 12 crit slots and it only works with an ECM suite. If you don't have an ECM suite installed into the mech, then it only acts as standard armor. Um, but if you have ECM equipped on the mech and you're running stealth armor, it basically triggers so that you have increased stealth, just like the name implies. Uh, you cannot be detected by most sensors, and it's very hard to get to target, even with utilizing Beagle Active and active probes. The trade-off to it, though, is that when you've got it activated, you're constantly building up heat. You're not dissipating the heat that you have. So you actually have to turn it off at some point in order to dissipate the heat that you've built up. So this is one of those things that is probably going to is by its very nature of needing an ECM suite is only going to be utilized on a very few mech variants, um, and even then, it's questionable of whether or not you're going to use it because one, you need the crit space in order to fit it in, and two, you need to basically have a reason to run to include it. If you're, I can see it being used in some of the light mechs and maybe some of the fast mediums like the Cicada 3M, but and maybe the and now the Assassin, but outside of that, it becomes really not worth the trade-off unless you are running a specific build where you're running a quick skirmisher or you need a very stealthy assault mech.
I was going to say Raven rocket launchers that actually do damage, plus stealth armor, plus laser backups. There you go. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of what I'm kind of talking about with like the rocket launchers. I'm gonna yell about rocket launchers probably until they come out.
Yeah.
So just giving everybody a heads up now. Very niche, dumb weapons. I enjoy. I have always been like that because I am a stupid idiot. So yes, back to stealth armor. I and the light pharaoh again. I'm with you. I think they're very niche. I think there might be a role for them, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of people using them. The light pharaoh, well, even to begin with, I don't think a lot of people throw pharaoh on there because endo steel is just so much better for weight saving, and gives a much better benefit currently with how the game is played. So I don't see light pharaoh, even though it only takes up 7 slots and you save a little bit of weight. I guess if you're really competitive and for some reason you have 7 crit slots available, I guess you could potentially see someone taking it just to fill those 7 crits for padding, while at the same time being able to bump their armor up on stuff that they're willing to sacrifice. Because a lot of comp builds, they drop the armor on like the whole left side or the whole right side of a mech, right? So I guess the longer that those could stay up would be better for your shielding side. So in that scenario, I could potentially see the light pharaoh, though I think that's pretty rare since most comp builds, specifically use up as much crit slots as possible. You don't usually have much left over. And again, with the stealth armor, I think it's very niche due to the reliance on ECM already being on board, so that limits it first. And also the effects of the stealth armor, I don't really know any real boon in how the game is played that will change or make it more desirable, I should say.
Yeah. Um, and that's another thing for it of how it's going to actually function in MWO. The suggestion I've seen a lot of people make is that it'll basically return the ECM ability of the mech back to what it was before it got toned down to what is it now,
Yeah, or even
90 meters.
yeah, or
Yeah.
not only that, maybe even if the enemy has ECM equipped, they can't on ECM you,
Yeah,
and maybe
they
you don't
can't jam your ECM.
yeah, or maybe you just don't show up on battle grid. Like
Yeah.
that could be it as well. Uh,
So
yeah, it's hard to
it,
say.
yeah, it'll be, again, this is something we're going to need to get more details on how they're going to implement it. This simple blurb on describing it gives us a hint, but doesn't tell us enough to make recommendations on whether or not people should be excited or not for this.
Yeah.
Uh,
Let's talk
moving
about
on.
targeting computers
Yeah.
and laser AMS. Targeting computers, basically inner-sphere versions of the clan targeting computers,
Yeah.
which this patch, I believe they got a nerf, didn't they? Or is it coming up?
They got toned down a bit.
Yeah.
The problem with targeting computers in MWO is this is one of those areas where they probably should have stuck to tabletop rules. In tabletop rules, targeting computers change in terms of crit space and weight depending on how many weapons you're linking to it. So for a clan, clan targeting computers weigh 1 ton and occupy 1 crit slot for every 5 tons of equipment they control. Inner sphere have for the inner sphere, it's 1 ton and 1 crit slot for every 4 tons it controls. So it makes it so that in MWO, you can easily have a 4 large pulse laser Warhawk and throw a targeting computer Mark 1 in there and it works. In tabletop, that doesn't work because that targeting computer would, by the rules, be much larger and wouldn't fit in the build that would be used in MWO. So now that you're implementing inner sphere targeting computers, you're going to have to rework the rules again in terms to balance them with what's already there with the clan targeting computers. So that means that either you're going to be increasing weight or increasing crit size, probably crit size, I'm thinking, and maybe adjusting the values that the targeting computer gives to weaponry, probably being less than what the clan targeting computer gives. So it's one of those pieces of equipment I've never been totally happy with the way that it's been implemented, and I every time they change it, I think they're doing it basically as we should have done this a different way originally because it's way too abused in game as is. So it it's just one of those things. I really wish that they had stuck again to the tabletop rules for targeting computers, but they didn't, and so we're in the situation we are right now.
I agree. And laser AMS is going to be, I think, a big game changer, but it
Yeah.
all depends on that last little bit of the sentence. Generate heats while it fires. Of course,
Yes.
having something that doesn't require ammo and is a defensive weapon is always great. That being said, depending on how much heat it generates, oh, this could be either really good or really bad.
Yeah. Um, it will be interesting.
I
And
definitely think though with laser AMS, you'll probably see mechs running AMS a lot more in the wild than you do
yeah,
now. Especially some of those obscure cases where you can cram 2 of them onto a mech. I'm looking at you, stuff like the Wolfhound, or even like some of the other bigger mechs as well that might be able to spare the tonnage to put 2 of them on there. But again, it could be interesting. I definitely think this is probably one of the better pieces of equipment coming out aside from the engines. If I had to rank it, I'd put like engines, laser area mess, and then everything else was kind of like eh.
Yeah. The in tabletop, the heat scale for it is 5 points of heat for the clan version and 7 points of heat for the inner sphere version. Now compare that to the anti-missile system where it's 1 heat for both, regardless of clan or inner sphere. That's a big increase. So uh, I I don't know if they'll utilize tabletop heat scaling for this because if they do, it may not be viable. Uh, it, they may need to adjust the heat values for it in when it gets implemented. Maybe 3 for clan and 5 for inner sphere. I I don't know, but it it's it'll be definitely interesting to see how they do it. Because basically the laser anti-missile system is a small pulse laser tasked to be a to shoot down missiles rather than shoot at vehicles or mechs or anything else. Just like how the anti-missile system is basically a machine gun that's been tasked to do the same thing. So
Let's talk about clan weapons. I don't want to hover on some of the stuff we already talked about. So, just going over what we've already talked about. Light and heavy machine guns coming to the clans. Laser ASM or AMS is coming to clans. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the ER micro laser and micro pulse laser.
yeah, this is one weapon I don't see getting utilized very often. Um, in tabletop, ER micro lasers and micro pulse lasers were implemented for initially proto mechs and then adapted for battle armor. They're not really utilized on mechs as a whole. Um, and when they are, they're mainly used as an anti-infantry, anti-battle armor weapon, not really as an anti-mech, anti-vehicle weapon. So I don't see this getting utilized mainly because it doesn't do a lot of damage. It doesn't have a very its range is really small, so it doesn't have a lot of purpose. The only mechs I really see
Yep.
running it are mainly a couple of the smaller lights like the Mistlings and maybe the Arctic Cheetah.
I was going
And
to say the micro pulse laser might replace I doubt it, but might replace the ER small laser spam lights for the
yeah,
clans. But I don't think you're going to see anyone use an ER micro
yeah,
laser. They're probably going to use micro pulse because it's only what 0.5 tons. It's half a ton, I
yeah,
think. For basically, yeah, I see them replacing ER small lasers. I don't see them replacing small pulse. Again, I think you're right. I think it's going to be a weapon that falls into obscurity and just basically not used. So I agree. ER micro lasers are probably never going to be seen. Micro pulse lasers might be seen, but again, I don't think so.
yeah. And even then, I don't really see them being if they do get used, being used outside of light mechs. Even on something like the Nova, I I mean, right now you've got Novas running around with small laser and small pulse laser punches. I don't see them trading those out for micro lasers and micro pulse lasers. I don't think it would be a worthwhile trade. But it depending on how they tweak the values for it when they implement it. If it's put in just as it is in tabletop, I don't see it being utilized outside of a couple light mechs. If they tweak it a little bit, then I might see it being utilized by some of the mediums, but I doubt we'll really see it outside of the light and medium classes. The heavies and assaults are not going to bother with it.
Just you wait till I break out my 12 micro pulse laser gargoyle. I'll make you take those words back. Let's talk about the heavy small, heavy medium, and heavy large laser because
Yeah.
these are going to be interesting. Because I don't know if people are going to switch to them because um, the ER mediums compared to a heavy medium, I think is still going to be preferred. But if we're talking heavy small lasers versus ER smalls, again, I think the ER or the heavy small lasers will probably come out and be seen a lot more than I say your heavy medium laser or your heavy large lasers. I think your standard clan ERs are still going to be utilized more than the heavy series.
Yeah, the heavy series is interesting. It deals a lot more damage, but has a higher heat cost and less range. Um, it's in terms of a brawl weapon, yeah, they're really great, but outside of that, they're not very useful. Um, if you are a brawler through and through, if you're taking an Ebon Jaguar and basically running the laser vomit variant of it constantly because you like getting within, 200 meters and just letting loose on people, heavy lasers are going to be right up your alley. If you're not a brawler like that, though, these are not really going to be part of the weapon systems you're going to take, at least not a lot of them. You might take one or two as, backups, especially if you're running something that is heavy in terms of ammunition based weaponry. If you're running a heavy streak build or a heavy SRM build or a heavy LRM build or now a heavy ATM build, having these heavy lasers as backup weapons, yeah, that's probably going to be help you a bit, especially if you're worried about someone getting up in your face where your ammunition based weaponry may not do as well.
I think the biggest key thing here, especially with that Ebon Jaguar example, and why I think that the standard ERs will be utilized more, is because of that heat increase versus damage. Right now, especially if you're doing missile spam, or not missile spam, laser spam. Heat is is more important than damage. And that's why I think the heavies might fall a little bit to the wayside. I think you'll see heavies on mechs that can only take like 2 energy or something like that, or 3 that aren't really spam but using it more for the medium laser type thing. I think you'll see the heavies used, but again, it's hard to say. I really do hope we get a lot more information on these weapon systems as far as like just raw data.
Yeah.
Um, but again, we're just throwing stuff against the wall, so that's where I'm kind of on my thought process is
Yeah.
that if I'm boating energy, I probably don't want heavy lasers because just the amount of heat. Even though I would be doing probably more damage, the heat would probably be the biggest drawback.
Yeah. So, the light active probe and light tag, really not a lot of change in terms of mechanics. They're still going to be basically tag and active probe. They just weigh less and have a shorter range to them. So the detectability range that you can use the active probe is going to be less when you use a light active probe, and the light tag is going to not go out as far for spotting ability as the regular tag is, but it's going to save you weight. Um, it doesn't save you crit space because they're the same crit size. They're only one crit slot, so that you can't slot. So nothing really all that different there, except if you want to run these, it's going to mean getting closer. So not really an issue if you're running, say, a streak build. These will help you greatly if you're running a heavy streak build like the Streak Crow. For the same weight as a tag, you can have both the active probe and the light tag. Uh, it's it's again going to be kind of a niche application, just how they are right now. Not a lot of people run active probes or tag, so uh, it it will be one of those weapon systems that really it's going to depend highly on what type of weaponry you're running and what role you're running.
I think I agree completely. I think the light active probe light tag combo is going to be very, very good. I just don't know how. I shouldn't say how good it will be, because obviously being able to cut through ECM even in the game right now is still great. Um, the only issue though is I agree with you completely. You just don't know how good the combination is going to be, and as such, dedicating the tonnage to that over an extra 5 points of damage or so. Why would you do that currently with how the game is?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So
But
moving on to our last piece of new
yes,
tech, the
aka
ATM,
the best weapon in the game.
the Advanced Tactical Missile. Now,
This. Go ahead. Go ahead.
the Advanced Tactical Missile, we had talked before. In tabletop, it does ammo switching, much like how LBXs do ammo switching. But because MWO is not doing ammo switching, at least from the description we've gotten, they found it actually a pretty inventive implementation of the ATM. What will be done is that at longer ranges it will do less damage, and at closer ranges it will do more damage because the Advanced Tactical Missile has three ammo types: standard, which does 2 damage; extended range, which does 1 damage per missile; and then high explosive, which does 3 damage per missile. So we can easily expect that at close range, the ATM in MWO is going to do like 3 damage per missile. At medium uh, ranges, it's going to do 2 damage per missile, and at long ranges, it's going to do only 1 damage per missile. Uh, the thing with the ATM though is it's kind of a replacement for LRMs. So as you brought up earlier with MRMs, how it's going to be fired? Is it going to arc, or is it going to fly straight and true? I'm thinking this is one of those cases where it could arc because it does have a longer range ability. Um, in fact, it actually does a little bit longer range than an LRM, at least in tabletop. The Probably the most interesting thing though is people are saying, well, why does uh, we can make it better by putting Artemis on it? And the thing is, you can't, because the Advanced Tactical Missile System comes with Artemis already built into it. It just doesn't say it. So it, by its stock configuration, already acts as an LRM launcher or an SRM launcher that has Artemis attached to it. So you're never really going to be able to make this launcher more accurate in terms of its spread.
And the special quirk for the ATM, where, as you said, higher damage up close, reduced damage for longer away. Going back and looking at the rocket launchers for the Inner Sphere, I feel like that sort of quirk for the rocket launchers could be used very well as, like, again, could be very useful. But I'm just going to say that. But ATMs have always been a personal favorite weapon of mine, so I am very excited to see them enter into the game. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because there such a weird little system.
Yeah, the, they're a fun system. I've used them a lot in tabletop because they can be adapted to the situation very nicely. Much like with on the Inner Sphere side, they have the multi-missile launcher, which basically fires both LRMs and SRMs. The ATM kind of is the clan equivalent of that, but it utilizes a standardized ammunition rather than both SRM and LRM ammunition. So, of all the clan weapons, I'll agree with you. I'm most excited for the ATM. In terms of Inner Sphere weaponries, I'm probably most excited for the rotary autocannons just because I really want to see what they do with the mechanics of them. Uh, but I'd have to say the best piece of technology getting released with this update, at least as it stands right now, is the light engine. That is my number one pick. If I could only have one piece of this technology added to the game, it would be that light engine.
Yeah, I think I could agree there. I think the light engines are going to be probably the biggest game changer out of the tech that we're getting. I no disagreement there.
Yeah.
Because everything else doesn't seem like, as far as the tech side, a lot of the stuff seems a little lackluster, especially compared to the light engine. I think the light engine is going to be the thing that you see the most, and therefore will have the biggest impact.
Okay, so
I was gonna say we also get some cool mechs alongside with this update. Some sweet new rides.
yep, two for the inner sphere, two for the clans, as we discussed previously.
Yeah, so we're getting the Uziel,
Yep, the Uziel,
the Annihilator,
which is
and the Cougar, and the Mad Cat MK2.
yep, the Uziel is a 50-ton medium. The Annihilator is a 100-ton assault. The Cougar is a 35-ton light, and the Mad Cat Mark II is a 90-ton assault. All of the Uziel is well known from MechWarrior 4. Outside of that, it really isn't all that spectacular. It will, looking at the variants that are listed, it's got uh, some interesting hard points here and there. Uh, we don't really see we see some of the new technology being implemented. The 5P gets a Streak 6 launcher. The 3P gets ER small lasers and Ultra AC2s. The Hero Mech is getting 4 light PPCs and 2 Streak SRM4 launchers added to it. It's but it's pretty standard. It doesn't really do anything different from other 50 and 55-ton mediums in the game for the Inner Sphere. The Annihilator, oh boy, the Annihilator. For everyone who's been asking for the Annihilator, and for those of us who have been wondering why, the reason for that is the Annihilator is basically a big cannon, and that's all it is. It's heavy with armor and heavy with weaponry and moves like a slug. At top speed without speed tweak, in most of the variants only run 32.4 kph. This thing actually makes the urban mech look fast, which is kind of scary when you think about it. But in a brawl in close quarters, fighting, the Annihilator lives up to its name. It can dish out a huge amount of damage very, very quickly. Again, it's getting a couple different variants that have some of the new technology. The 1P is getting the rotary autocannons. The Mean Baby, which is the hero, is getting Streak 6s. So a couple different things being added in here and there. I believe one of the variants has a light engine, I think.
I believe
Yes,
you are
the
correct.
1P has a light engine. The Mean Baby, the hero, has an XL. Then we get to the Cougar, which is Cattra's, the one Cattra was wanting. And as soon as this announcement went live, actually before he sent me the text message about wanting to do podcasts, it was Cougar, 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 Cougar. He was basically reverted to being a Pokemon and only saying one word, and that was Cougar.
It was really
And
awkward when I was in the mall when I was on my phone and saw this as well. Yeah. I got some really weird looks because I was kind of standing beside the lingerie area and it was kind of weird.
So the Cougar is interesting because it's the only Omni mech, and in terms of the two clan mechs, it is the only Omni. The Mad Cat is actually a battle mech, not an Omni mech. Um, the Cougar cannot you can't switch out its internal structure and armor. You can't change the engine on it because it's an Omni, and so the Cougar basically is a light support mech. It without speed tweak, it only runs 81. With speed tweak, it's only going to go like 87. So it's not very fast. It is basically going to act as a light support mech for use. That said, it's got omnipods that really can help do that. It can run some really heavy missile builds. It can run some really heavy energy builds. The uh, Cougar H variant has an ECM slot in the head, which I can easily see that getting added to every single variant. People will just
And
buy that.
and not
Uh,
only that, like not only does it have the ECM in the head, it's the only one with jump jets as well.
yeah,
Which is going to be very, very interesting. As far as like component wise, I think the H is probably the strongest one, and
yeah.
that's the one I'm actually the most excited for.
The the hero version is going to be rocking ATMs. The E variant also rocks ATMs, so those will be in probably a very good fit for this mech, since it is going to probably be played more as a support mech, since it doesn't have the speed really to be a light skirmisher or a light hunter. Then finally, the Mad Cat Mark II, big old assault mech, iconic from Mech Warrior 4. People have been wanting this mech for a very, very, very long time, and so since it's finally been announced, we can finally rest easy and thank Christ that they'll stop asking about it. Uh, no ECM at all to any of the variants. The Because it is a battle mech, you can switch out the armor if needed, but only one variant, the Mad Cat 2A, has standard armor instead of ferro fibrous. All of them have endosteel. All of them run the Clan XL engine, so really no big changes there. You might tweak the size of the engine, going from the 360 that they're initially equipped with to maybe something larger. They can run a max engine of 400, so you could get this mech moving pretty darn quickly if you want to. But the trade-off there is going to be in terms of the weaponry. Uh, each variant has pretty much similar hard points. Uh, the only They all basically have a mixture of ballistic energy and missile hard points. Uh, there's only a few that are lacking or only have one type of hard point predominant. So there's not a lot of variation in terms of the Mad Cats in terms of what they're going to be capable of. A lot of them are probably going to run very similar builds. I fully expect to see a lot of Gauss PPC builds for these variants.
I agree. I think the Mad Cat MK2, you're probably going to see a lot of it on the battlefield because it's a very versatile mech. I just don't know how well used those missile pods are going to be. But I mean, anything that can cram energy and ballistics pretty well is definitely going to be something that people are going to pick up. Um, like you said, the Cougar, it's going to probably be a mixed bag. As far as light mechs go, it's probably not very good. You got to kind of think of it a little bit more along the lines of those lower tonnage mediums, which again, not really used. I'm going to use it because personal favorite. Again, Annihilator, probably a mech that you might see. I have a feeling you probably will. I just don't know how good it's going to be because of how slow it is. But I had some good memories in Mech Warrior 4 with the Annihilator. If anyone's played on a lot of the old Mech Tech servers when those were still around for Mech 4, I always used to roll around in an Annihilator, doing nothing but rack twos and ultra twos, and as many as I could slam in there, because all I would do was just cockpit shake people until they threw up, and it was great.
The nice thing about the Annihilator, though, is that almost all of these variants, except for the 1P and the Hero, uh, are rocking standard engines, standard armor, and standard internal structure. So there are opportunities to gain weight savings, so that you could have a bigger engine to go faster. The same thing. They also are all almost three of them. The 2A, the 1A, and the 1E are all rocking single heat sinks. So you're going to be able to do some weight savings there by switching those to double. The biggest problem probably for the Annihilator though is going to be its crit space. So
Yeah, and
if you're
that's
going to want these heavy weapon builds on it, you're going to end up having to make some hard choices in terms of what you do to gain weight savings and what you are rocking for weaponry.
and it's true. The Annihilator's going to probably run into a lot of issues with its weight saving.
Yeah.
And of course, the Uzil, a mech that, as you said, kind of premiered MechWarrior 4, brought it out kind of up front for the community. I mean, it was on, I believe, the cover of the game.
Yes.
For, I think, what was it,
MechWarrior
Vengeance?
4.
Was it Vengeance or Mercenary? No, it was Vengeance.
Oh, it was, yeah, MechWarrior 4 Vengeance.
And another mech, and it's also a mech that a lot of people don't seem to realize was kind of the poster child for Mech Assault 2 as well. It wasn't on the cover, but it was pretty much used in every single mission.
Yeah, but we don't like to talk about Mech Assault 2 or Mech Assault.
Did I don't know if I mentioned or not, but I actually went to a yard sale recently. I bought Mech Assault 2 for a whole $2, collector's edition. Now that's a bargain. But anyways, as I was saying, it's another mech that I think will be interesting. I think again, I told you I'm gonna harp about this. Going back to the rocket launchers, I think the Uzil's a prime example or a good example of a mech that the rocket launchers, if rocket launchers were done correctly, could be useful. Mainly because of that center torso missile slot. If you could put a rocket launcher 20 in there for like a kind of like a just in case type weapon, I guess. I think you would see a lot of use. But I think UZL in general, again, people are probably going to do the standard 3 PPCs in it. It'll be fine. Overall, what's your thoughts on at least your thoughts on this mech pack, I guess?
I like this mech pack. I think it's got some good. I think it's got a lot more pros than it has cons. I would have liked to see a lot more variants showcasing the new equipment and new weapons that are going to be released. Um, I think they're doing themselves a little of a disservice by not having that. I would have liked to have seen either one of the Annihilators or one of the Uzils rocking ECM and stealth armor, just to give people an idea of what they could do with it, rather than building a mech from the ground up with it on their own. Having PGI actually take the first steps in showcasing it would have been nice. But overall, I'm okay with this. I'm actually very curious to see what mechs are going to come down the pipeline after this. Because we have been told they're going to be going back to more of a mech pack release system rather than an individual mech release system. So it'll be very interesting to see what else is coming down the pipeline after this.
And I also agree. As far as price point though, what's your thoughts?
Price point, I'm okay with this. Standard packs are all $20.
Except for the
Instead
Cougar.
of, I'm sorry, they're all $20 except for the Cougar, which is 15. That's pretty great considering the Annihilator standard pack and the Mad Cat 2 standard pack are both going to be $20, even though they're both assaults. I feel though that if they're lowering it to 15 for the Cougar, they should have also lowered it to 15 for the Uziel. But
And that's what I was about to say as well. If you don't mind me cutting in as far as like
Yeah.
price points go, I think the standard price points are pretty all right. The Uziel is the one that stands out the most as an outlier because I think it makes sense that the Cougar is a little bit cheaper as a light mech. But pricing the Uziel is the same as like a Mad Cat or an Annihilator is kind of in my opinion.
Yeah, I would have matched the Uziel and the Cougar to their
Yeah,
price
I
points in
agree
the
with that
Annihilator
as well.
Mad Cat.
And that's also going to expand with me to the collector and ultimate editions as well. Of course, the collector being 40 and 30, and I believe 70 and 50. Yeah.
Yeah. If you do the add-ons, the heroes are $15 add-ons, except for the hero for the Cougar, which is a $10 add-on. The reinforcements, which are 2 more variants, are $15 for everything except for the Cougar, which is again $10. So, uh, that said, if you do your early adopters, you're going to be getting what it looks to be like uh, a in a cockpit statue of the mech, a interesting, uh, I believe those are decals. Uh, so like the Annihilator is getting a kaiju decal with a little cartoon kind of Godzilla that's going raw. You get different 3 different camouflage colors. You're getting, I believe that's Crusader camouflage pattern for the Uziel and the
Yes.
Annihilator. I don't know what that pattern is for the
Applejack.
That's Applejack.
If you click on them, they pop up with what it is.
Okay, yeah, it's Applejack for the Cougar and the Mad Cat, and everyone gets for pre-ordering a 6.5 million C-bill bundle.
Which, if you order all of them, is quite a bit of C-bills.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen some premium time thrown in.
Yes, that is the other thing I wanted to talk about as well, is the removal of the premium time from these packages, which, is not a great move in my opinion.
Yeah, though they do add in, if you buy both, own both the Uziel and Annihilator collector packages, you're going to get a hanging cockpit item that can give you a 5% XP boost or a 5% C-bill boost if you own both the Uziel and Annihilator Ultimate packages. You'll get a standing item that will do the same thing alongside the hanging item. Same thing for the clans. If you have the clan collectors, you'll get the hanging.
You basically get hanging and standing as well.
Yeah, if you get the ultimate.
Now, this is something I also wanted to talk about, is the introduction of these items that actually help XP and C-bill boosting on a permanent scale with mechs. And this is something I don't know if we talked about it. I think we have, saying an item you can purchase to more or less make a mech a champion or make a mech a hero mech in terms of granting the XP boosts and the C-bill boosts or something like that. I think we talked about this before.
Yes.
So seeing this introduced is, I think, very interesting.
Yeah, and it's not a big boost. It's 5%. I mean,
well,
a champion
10% if you have both equipped, right?
Yeah, and a champion is what, 15% XP boost.
10?
10?
Yeah, I know it's only XP. It's not the C-bill, but the heroes are 30 across.
A hero is C-bills.
So I just want to put this in perspective. If you're running a hero mech with both of these in it, that's 40% increase off the top right away. If you're running premium time, that's quite a big boost in my opinion. My only question though is, are these rewards, one, a one-time only thing, and two, will they be coming out for C-bill, or not C-bills, but for MC? And if they come out for MC, I wonder if they'll excuse me, I wonder if they'll have ones that cost more that will grant a higher boost or a lower boost for less. I wonder if they're going to play around and maybe see what they can do and that sort of thing to reduce, basically make the grind easier, to quote
Yeah.
unquote. And I wonder if you would see other items coming in that kind of grant this thing. So maybe they're not going to be the item that's big XP or C bills flashing and stuff like that. But I wonder if they'll grant other items like the same sort of idea, kind of thing.
Yep.
So it's just not this like big XP or this big C bill symbol hanging in your mech that it might be able to decorate with something else, but still get a boost. A boost.
We'll have to see.
Yes.
So that pretty much does it for the Civil War updates in terms of technology and new mechs. We did have a patch drop today on Tuesday, the March 21st. We've got the Assassin being added into the game. I haven't talked to a lot of people yet about that, so we'll probably cover that more in depth in the next patch. In the next podcast. New champions and trial mechs have been added. These like previous champion and trial mechs are their builds are all based on community builds and feedback. One person who got picked, whose build got picked, was Larsh for the Nova champion. The Nova S, his champion build got picked, and Larsh is a former member of A.C.E.S, so congrats to him. We had a couple bug changes and fixes go in. The clan targeting computer changes were added in, and basically their bonuses got toned down a little bit. Component health and critical hit changes were added in, where the inner sphere weapon pieces were basically given more health, but they have a higher crit chance because they take up more crit slots. Whereas the clan components have a smaller crit chance due to having less crit slots, but have less health overall. So that seemed to be a good balance right there. Still no card suits decals added in. I'm still very, very disappointed in UPGI for that.
That's the biggest disappointment with this patch.
Yeah.
No, but again, it seems to be a lot of fixes. Of course, if people are following the drama, which is the skill tree system, of course, I think that was supposed to come out this week.
That was delayed because
basically no one liked it, and I don't.
They finished the phase 2 for the public test, and they got a lot of feedback. A lot of it was positive in terms of the changes made. There were still a number of suggestions made to better the skill system, and so we are expecting at some point an announcement for a third phase of PTS for the skill tree. There have been a lot of people making suggestions still of what PGI should change and what they should include for this third phase. Not sure when that will go up, but right now we'll probably not see the new skill system added in until at least May at the earliest. Possibly not until this summer at a more reasonable projection, maybe June, possibly July. We'll have to wait and see.
And to add on to this, when I said when no one liked it, I didn't mean to like sound like an asshole with it, because as someone who did play, I did manage to get into phase 2 like I was hoping to. It was it was very much an improvement over the first one, and I think we talked about this in previous episodes, but it still wasn't there. And I agree with a lot of people. I don't think a full release of it at that stage would have been good. So I'm glad that they actually listened to the community, delayed it until they can work on it some more, and hopefully third edition will be even better still. So I didn't want to sound like, oh, it's because of the community that we didn't get a lot this patch. But like, yeah, it's because of the community, and it's a positive thing. It's not a negative. Anyways, just before people flag my video on YouTube.
So, and then finally, just a little announcement. The Lucky Charms 3 loot bag event is going on and will go till April 1st. So get on and take your chances
I was going to
of.
say, get your free loot bags, my friends.
You can find this event under the tournaments page on the MWO site. There are a number of wonderful rewards that you can earn, including a Banshee 3M Champion mech with mech bay included. So if you want some MC, if you want some premium time, if you want just C-bills, if you want consumables, you want some cockpit items, go on, play some matches, take your chance. Make sure to log in to your account and go to the Lucky Charms 3 tournament page to redeem your your qualifying matches. You have some time after the 1st to do that, but eventually they will run out. So basically, I would loot bags disappear on April 10th. So once you finish your plays for the night or for the day, I would suggest logging on quickly, checking your qualifying matches, and redeeming them immediately so you don't forget, because you don't want to miss out on any rewards you may have earned.
Yes, and free stuff is always appreciated.
Yep. Go get some free stuff.
Go get your free stuff. Even like, again, I've got a couple things of MC and it adds up. Especially if you're looking for mech bays. If you're someone who doesn't spend or want to spend money in a game, it's a pretty good way to get that small amount of MC, and it adds up pretty quickly. And it's basically, if you get lucky and get mech bays from the loot bags, or if not, you'll probably end up with a good amount of MC if you need to purchase mech bays. So for a lot of the newer players, I think it's very worthwhile to take part.
Yeah. And if you're one of those players that's constantly worrying about needing more C-bills, this is the event for you. You will undoubtedly get some C-bills from this. So not just from your regular playing, but from your qualifying match rewards, you will undoubtedly get some C-bills.
Yes. I don't think I have anything else written down on the notes for tonight's podcast. So I think that's everything.
Yep, we're pretty good. Again, we'll talk more about the Assassin in the next podcast, since it just came out today and we have not had a chance to play it or really talk to people who have played it. So look forward to that in episode 52.
Yes. So thank you, everybody, for listening to the Armored Combat Escalation Services Junkyard podcast. I've been your host, Brandon. I wanted to say thank you to Tirkron for coming out, and I just want to say thank you to everybody for listening. And until next time, Mech Warriors.